Hey, leaders. In this episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration, Lorna and I are joined by Kevin Van Lagen, principal of Altario School since 2014. In addition to his administrative experience, Kevin is also a sought-after speaker, sharing his expertise throughout Saskatchewan and Alberta since 2018 on the critical role public education plays in the rural revitalization process. We're thrilled to explore Kevin's unique perspective on how schools can serve as hubs for collaboration and innovation in rural communities. This conversation will dive into his leadership experiences and the strategies he's used to strengthen schools and communities alike. So let's get started.
Intentional and purposeful focus on building a culture of collaboration is the secret for leaders striving to make a difference. In building a culture of collaboration, Kurtis and Lorna Hewson will share simple tips, ideas, and strategies to take your organization's collaborative efforts to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of Building a Culture of Collaboration. As always, I'm Lorna Hewson, co-founder and lead learner of Jigsaw Learning.
And I'm Kurtis Hewson. Today, we're joined by Kevin Van Lagen, also known as the Prairie Principal on some of the social media platforms. Kevin's passion for public education and its impact on rural communities offers a powerful lens on collaboration and leadership, and we can't wait to hear his insights. So welcome to our show, Kevin. Great to have you on.
Thank you, and I'm excited to be here.
So we always want to start off a little bit around your journey as an educator, and off camera, we were able to make a few different connections that you and I have, particularly in regards to central Alberta rural communities. But share us a little bit of your path to arrive where you're at today.
Yeah, for sure. I was living down in the Lethbridge area, and I was actually doing my Master's of Education through the U of L. And in the summer of 2014, the professor that summer was superintendent of Prairie Land School Division. Mm-hmm. And in conversation with him, we got to talking that he had a school in his division that he was looking for a principal for. And one thing led to another. A conversation that started on a Monday morning turned into accepting a position on Friday afternoon of the same week. And my wife and I and five children moved to a place we had never, ever heard of. And I always say this, and I'm not ashamed to say it, but it's probably a good thing that we accepted the position before we came up here, because when we actually came up here for our first tour, it was hot and there was grasshoppers, and the first impression was like, oh boy, what have we got ourselves into? But we had made the decision, and my wife and I, had kind of committed to staying here for 3 years, using it as a stepping stone to get into leadership in public schools in the province, and here we are in our 11th year, and still going strong.
Time flies, doesn't it?
Unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always funny when and I heard a story just this morning from someone who works in Yellowknife area where theirs was, we came for a job, and now decades later, we're still here. We've raised our family, and yeah,
not
exactly the path we expected, but it's a good path.
When we were first here, a community member had said to us, "Oh, we hope your children graduate from the school." And my wife and I kind of laughed, said, "Our oldest won't even graduate. Our third one is graduating this year, and our youngest is currently in grade 7. So we're well on the way."
Yeah.
So it's quite likely.
Yeah. So we connected off camera that I actually have a personal connection with Altario back from my high school days, and I won't name a year to date myself. But for those not familiar with the community of Altario, can you tell us a little bit more about it, where you are the principal of that community school? Give us a little bit around the community and then the school itself, some of the configurations and demographics.
Sure. So Altario is in East Central Alberta. We're about 10 minutes from the Saskatchewan border. Very, very tiny community. I believe we have 8 houses in Altario itself. But we're part of 3 communities, Kirramere, Altario, and Compeer, all about the same size. And then the surrounding area, the ranches and the farms in the area is what comprises the community. Decades ago, Altario had its own little hospital and had a garage and had some stores and so forth. It has none of those things anymore. It has a community hall that's used for gatherings, and it has the school, and that's pretty, and the houses. So that's pretty much it. When we came here in 2014, as a matter of fact, in Altario itself, there was only one youth living in the town. The rest were all bused into school. That's changed somewhat, and it's also changed. There had been no new building happening in Altario for probably 3 or 4 decades, and we've had some new builds in the last 10 years as well. So it's a little bit changing, but again, it's very remote. I don't even call it rural. It's remote, and but it has a strong sense of community, and the school always has mattered a lot to the community, and historically had some great academic success in particular. Had some teachers who stayed for several decades. The longest one actually taught for 52 years in the building, and had really set a high standard. But prior to us arriving, it had fallen on somewhat difficult times. I was the 6th principal in 6 years, which is a common theme in small rural schools, right? And it had fallen to its smallest enrollment number of 49 students, and was on pace within 5 years to get down to 33 students. So definitely in difficult times. The superintendent of the day had said to the community, look, if this new principal doesn't work out, we're going to have to start talking about the future of the school. So the community was motivated. They actually brought in a new home for our family to live in. They really wanted us to live in the community and become part of the community. And they got something right away. In the first parent council meeting, a lady said, how are you enjoying it? And I said, and she's like, no, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to your wife, because we want your family to stay, and we know that often it's spouses that are not happy and move on. So the community was all in and trying to make things work, and that was kind of the foundation for what we've done here.
All right. And today, what is the school at as far as grade levels and population, Kevin?
So we're K to 12, as we've always been, and we currently have 71 students, which is amazing. I mean, for many people that would sound very small, but for us, that's double of what we're supposed to be. And it's doing very well. We've also added a play school, which has 10 students in it. So, it's kind of exciting on Tuesdays and Thursdays in particular, when play school's here and ECS is here. We have, between students and staff, close to 100 people in the building.
Awesome. Yeah. So, you mentioned coming in and it was at a precarious time, and now we would see Altario School as one that's thriving. And you mentioned off camera, you've got visitors regularly coming to see what it looks like. So I know this will take a little bit of time, but can you describe to our audience, what makes Altario School what it is as far as a leader in rural education, and maybe just a little bit of the path that you took as leading that work into now becoming pretty vibrant in leading rural education?
Yeah, really curious about that journey, because clearly in those 11 years, you've doubled your population in your school when it was at a place of decline.
And also come from a place of people in the province not even knowing where Altario is to where now you mention it and people go, oh yeah, that's the place that has that school.
Sure. So I guess what we're most known for right now is our agriculture program. And that's, when we run into people and they figure out who we're from Altario, and then they figure out who we actually are, they're like, oh, wow, your school, you have that agriculture program. And so we do. We have a fully functioning farm. It's led by students, and each day there's chores, there's care for a variety of animals. We grow about 700 heads of produce each week, and we have a bunch of different things going on. And that's what people know about us, and we're very proud of it, and that's why we get tours. They want to see how we do that. We've had tours, Ontario West in the province, in the country, but we've also had people from Ethiopia, from Germany, from all over the world, really coming to see what we're doing here. So that's exciting, of course, but it just didn't happen overnight.
Of course.
And this was a process. So when I came in 2014, actually, All the teachers in the school had quit the previous year except for one, and she was in year about 30, I believe, and someone you could really build around. And it was kind of exciting as a new principal because I had all new teachers to deal with, although my support staff remained the same, which was great because you had the background and an experienced administrative assistant who could really help me and whatnot.
And I assume connections with the community.
Yeah,
connections with the community,
really important.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think in the first year, the only thing we did that stood out was we just really cared about the students and built relationships with the students and started doing things, whether it was field trips, whether it was special food activities, whatever it was, but got to build those relationships, and the staff I had were in on that, and that got the community excited. And over those first few years, there was some molding of the staff, and quite honestly, we had to let some staff go and hire new staff in order to build the alignment in those first few years. And as that grew, the community started to get pretty excited because the school was a place they wanted to be again. The kids were excited about going to school. I remember two stories I remember in the first year. One was a grade 11 student who was writing a diploma exam, and in the week leading up to the exam, I said, "Hey, are you ready for your diploma exam?" He's like, "Oh no, I'll fail it." He goes, "But that's what we do in Altario. We fail diploma exams." And he was very honest, very nice student, and a good student, and he was honest, and it was actually quite accurate. Our diploma results were terrible. But then towards the end of the year, another student said, I was always kind of ashamed to be from Altario, and now I'm starting to be a little bit excited, and I'm telling people I'm from Altario and I don't feel bad about it. So those were we could see small changes happening.
Yeah,
so we built on that, right? We just started building on doing school well, quality teaching, good learning environments, caring about the students, discipline gone basically. And in 2017, so a few years down the road, we started talking more and more about hey, how do we make this sustainable, and where do we go? How do we move forward? And talking with community, talking with staff, we said, our identity is agriculture in this community, so let's not try to build something new. Let's embrace it. And that's when we started, and we started very small. We just started with a garden, a school garden. And I think school gardens are a terrible idea, by the way. because you harvest in the summer and the kids aren't here. It doesn't even make sense, right? But that's where we started. In 2018 is a few staff members came to me in the spring and said, we really want to build on this agriculture thing, and I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? And so their idea was we're going to have 4 theme days throughout the year around agriculture, and we're going to bring in speakers and do activities. And I said, great. I think what I'm going to do at this point, we had bought an acreage near the community, so we were starting to dig some roots there. And I said, I'm going to have my boys are doing 4-H. I'm going to have an extra steer at our house, and we're going to call it the school steer. And every couple of weeks, I'll take the kids to my house and show them how to whatever. A parent said to me, why wouldn't you just do that at the school? So I said, okay, let's try it at the school. And so the Agricultural Society gave us $3,000 to get a shelter and some panels to set this up, and we got 2 steers. The school board trustee donated one of the steers, so you can just see how parents, trustees, staff, right? Everyone's in on this, and we started with a couple steers. We really had no idea what we were doing, and we moved forward. Resistance, absolutely, because who's ever heard of raising steers at school, right?
Of course. School, yeah.
It was kind of neat because the resistance definitely didn't come from students. Resistance generally doesn't come from students. Resistance comes from adults, right? But as those adults who were resisting it, as their children or grandchildren started to get excited, the resistance fell away. So the students broke down the resistance, not knowing they were doing that, but they did. So then in 2019, we went to our school board and said, can we have a barn? and they said, okay. So we had this barn. We got it in May. In June, we had an open house where we did a barn dance. We did a kind of a showcase of everything we had done, and we auctioned off our steer, one of the steers, and it sold for $39,585.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And if you could do that with every steer, like I would not be a principal right now.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt.
I was going to say, I
No
grew up in
doubt.
4-H, and getting that $1,200 paycheck was
But
Yeah.
indication
fantastic.
that your community was totally behind you.
And you know what? Truthfully, I was hoping that something special was going to happen. Like I was hoping, what if I could hit 10 grand, right? And actually we got other donations on top of it. So we raised about 50 grand that night.
Yeah.
And that was the start of just going, right? So now we have hydroponic food modulars. We have a fodder building where we grow feed for animals. We have cows, turkeys, chickens, pigs, steers, sheep, bees, so a variety of animals, and we just continue to grow. So this hasn't been announced yet, but by the time the podcast is announced, we just secured another $500,000 to start building log cabins that we're going to use as dorms for international students and other students to come here.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah,
Oh,
so
that is incredible, Kevin. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So this podcast is all about building a culture of collaboration, and hearing that story is amazing. But it doesn't just happen because one person says, hey, let's get to a place where we're going to have log cabins to house international students. The collaboration and the challenges of that collaboration, I'm sure you have a lot of lessons learned and insights. So love for you to talk about that. What are some ways that you've discovered through this work that are some tenets that you've discovered that are really critical when thinking about building collaboration that can lead to something out of everybody's imagination?
Well, and that's collaboration outside of what's happening just in the school itself, but the community and your parents and your families all working together, obviously.
We'll be right back to continue this episode. Are you feeling alone when it comes to addressing the needs of students in your classroom or in your school? We realize that every child has their own unique set of needs. How do we possibly attend to each and every student in each and every curricular area and in each and every circumstance? Simply put, you can't do it alone.
We were feeling the same way in our school, but we were determined to find a different way to support the needs of each and every one of our students. Through much trial and error and studying the current research on professional learning communities, response to intervention, and much, much more, we developed a framework that would support not only the students in our building, but every staff member as well.
Collaborative response is a framework with 3 essential components: collaborative structures and processes, data and evidence, and continuum of supports. With careful implementation of these intersecting pieces, your school can live the belief that every child deserves a team.
Get the introductory chapter of our best-selling text, Collaborative Response, 3 foundational components that transform how we respond to the needs of learners, for free. This chapter also includes a link to the companion website with numerous resources and templates related to the framework.
Go to bit.ly/C_R-intro to access the chapter. That's bit.ly/C_R-intro. Join the thousands of schools implementing collaborative response and seeing incredible levels of success for all students. And now back to our conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, it's difficult to put it all in one little nugget, but so that staff, that teacher that I was here when I got here is still here, and she's a phenomenal teacher, and she sets the standard. As far as work ethic, as far as expectations, as far as what it means to be a great teacher. And I've had some pretty interesting conversations with her in the last year or so, and I've said to her, like why have we had so much success? You know, you've served under all kinds of principals, you know, dozen to 20 probably. And what's different? And the word she uses, like, she's like, you're the first principal that genuinely holds us accountable. You know, we have expectations that we build together, but then your expectation is that every single staff member in this building follows those expectations or that direction. And she said, because of that, she goes, I've come off my island. I've opened my door, and we all know what an island is when it comes to teaching, right? We shut our door. We don't pay attention. And she said it was just so disheartening over the years. You know, you're working hard and you're trying your best for students, and then next door or up the hallway, there's people that are not doing that, and students aren't getting what they need, and there's nothing you can do about it because they're not. You know, there's no standard being set. So, I always think when we talk, people like to talk about, you know, cultures of high expectations, and they always place that first on the students. I think we need to place that first on ourselves as adults, and I don't believe that I should never ask anything of my staff that I'm not willing to do myself, and that I'm not actually doing myself. So, you know, if I'm looking for hard work, if I'm looking for buy-in, I also have to, you know, model that and do that. So I think in a way that is one foundational piece. Then secondly, I think as a leader, you have to, you know, set the direction, set the big picture, but you have to be okay with a little bit of a variation of what you're thinking. So I always compare it to a riverbank. So in my mind, my riverbank is sustainability and education. And as long as it stays within those two things, I'm okay with the direction it goes. Right. And so sometimes, you know, people will say, no, you should really go this way. And I'm like, okay, off we go. And you know, and we'll go that way. And most of the time it works because it's their idea. If staff aren't excited about something, you can bang your head against the wall and it's never going to work. And then the third thing is your team makeup matters. So there's been staff that willingly have left our school because what we're doing here doesn't fit with what they want to do. Doesn't make them inferior teachers. It doesn't make them, you know, poor staff members. It's just not there's no alignment. There's no fit. And I think fit matters. So, you know, when we're trying to recruit, when we're trying to build our team, I really spend time on, you know, does our environment work for you? Is this going to be a fit for you? And it's kind of interesting when I do those interviews and speak with prospective staff that they're sometimes taken aback because I spend so much time on, you know, does this team work for you? And then when I hire someone and on their first day, I'll sit them down in my office, and that doesn't matter what position they have in the school, whether it's a teacher or any support staff. And I say, this is how our school operates. We are a team. We're on the same page. We don't have divisions. You know, our staff room is extremely positive and we get along. And if at any moment I see that you are going to hinder that, you will no longer be in this building. It's a very forthright conversation. And I said, I'm saying this right away so there's no surprises, but this is the standard. And it works. Our staff is hugely aligned. And when you have especially in rural schools, if your staff is happy, it's going to filter out because they live in the community, they're married to community members, you know, they have children in the school, et cetera, right? So that, you know, creates alignment with the parents, where we can have great conversations with parents, where we can say, you know, which direction should we do, where should we go? And if you can get the adults online, man, can the students thrive, right? And the students can do great things, and that's ultimately what we're after.
Absolutely. Wow, you've described a lot there that would love to be able to unpack here, Kevin. The first is I think you pointing towards clarity, and we've heard this from a number of people that we've talked to on this podcast and outside, is having clear direction and clarity is so critical if you want us to operate as a team. If it's a muddled message, then people will make their own assumptions, which doesn't lead to coherence across an organization.
Yeah, and I think the clarity has to also, and you call muddled messages. If you say, here's what we're going to do, but then you don't actually do it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
know, well, you're not truthful, and that's the students start to disbelieve you at the very least, or not respect you. The staff are like, I don't care what he says because he's not going to do it. And the community's like this, they're saying nice things, but it's not happening. They're not seeing the results, right? So clarity has to come with action, and
Yeah.
you have to follow through with here's the path. And I think one of the reasons we've had success is sometimes we just want to do absolutely everything under the sun. And
Yeah.
and I get that as an educator because we're excited about everything. But let's be incremental, let's be methodical, let's do this, and then let's do this, and then let's do this, right? And the results will come. I just presented to our school board our annual education results report, and I said, it's really, our results are phenomenal. And I said, it's structure, routine, and consistency. We've
Yeah.
been doing this now for a decade, and the results are really starting to speak for themselves.
That's
That's
great.
outstanding. And I love what you're saying there too about not only as a leader am I holding others accountable to what we have said is important, but I'm holding myself accountable first and foremost,
Yeah,
which I think is critically
Mhm.
important for your modeling and credibility.
yeah, and I think I'm not a big email guy. I don't send out a lot of emails. I don't send out a lot of directives. I like conversation, and in a small school, you can have conversation, right?
Yeah.
But even things like, I had a staff member who was on an extended sick leave, and when she returned in good health, I sat down with her and I said, I have a question for you. At any point during your sickness, did you feel pressure from me to be in this building, or that I wasn't supporting you? And I think those type of questions where you're ready to hear answers you may not, that may not be comfortable,
Yeah.
but that builds trust with your staff as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that focus on trust is so critical in relationships. So being able to ask those hard questions and be willing to accept those answers. But when you take on those answers that you're maybe not so happy about hearing, it allows you to surface some situations that you can attend to as well.
100%. And you know, being a leader is a humbling experience,
Mhm.
because when you don't do what you need to do, or you make a mistake, you'll know it and you'll hear it, and you have to recognize when you do that, and you have to apologize, and you have to not do it again, and not keep on repeating the same mistakes, right? When you're going, also when you're having those conversations for feedback, it has to again follow up with action. You have to be sincere in what we're saying, in
Mhm.
order to really build the culture that you want, where people trust each other, are willing to work together, and the culture of collaboration, as you call
Mhm.
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Well, and I think what's critical, and you've alluded to it for sure, is particularly as a leader, being willing to be uncomfortable, to be
Mhm.
willing to say, I don't have all the answers here, but we're going to certainly have the conversations to arrive at those answers together. And I think if you're doing that as a leader, then it helps others to be uncomfortable. We often say if you're truly collaborating, there should be a level of discomfort
Yeah.
for everyone, healthy discomfort, but
Mhm.
we should be just a little bit uncomfortable because we're working in spaces where there's not predetermined playbooks for what it is that we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of people don't realize, because they know me as a Prairie principal and the guy that has agriculture school, I actually have no agriculture background.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really, uh, I've leaned heavily on community expertise, and I have to go with what they tell me, because I don't know what I'm doing, and that's fine. And I think, if we speak of alignment with community, if a community is lending their expertise and seeing their expertise actually coming into the school,
Yeah.
suddenly there's a feeling of ownership. This is our school, it's not the school, and they feel like they're part of the education process. Now suddenly, instead of, a traditional, almost combative role that can raise its head in school communities. Now we have a collaborative role where the community and the staff and the school are working together for the good of the children, right? And I think that, again, that vulnerability to trust the community, and when they say, here's how you have to do this, and say, okay, because I actually don't know how to do it, so I have to listen to them, is valuable.
Yeah. I recently had heard, geez, it might have been over the weekend, this idea that as a teacher and as an educational leader, you're always a student and sometimes you teach. I thought that was a really interesting way to put it, that if you're really engaging in this work authentically as an educational leader, it's as a student first, because you're always learning through positive and sometimes negative experiences, but everything's a learning experience that we go through.
Well, I go back to that idea of clarity too, and that obviously you have a shared vision. But that shared vision doesn't mean that you have every step figured out and you know exactly the direction. And actually, it's more powerful when you have that shared vision and you invite and encourage and accept other people's support in the direction. And being a leader doesn't mean you need to have all of those pieces figured out. And in a true collaborative situation, then you're going to accept and value and acknowledge people's input.
One of the things, and we've done it twice now, we did it in 2017 and we did it in 2021, is we gathered our grade 7 and 12 students together in 2017 and said, where do you see Altario in 10 years? And we got a graphic recorder to do the cartoon thing. And their students dream big, and they're very positive, and they thought we should have a Costco, and the like. But a lot of their stuff was actually really good. And then in the evening we met with the community, and they saw what the students had done, the work the students had done. So that was also positive. And so it was a 10-year kind of vision document. And in 2021 we said, we've actually met all the realistic parts of that document. So we did it again. And in 2021, we talked about growing KAC, Kirmir Altario Compere. We talked about the community, we talked about the school, and we talked about the agriculture program. And this huge banner hangs in our foyer. And I always say it's our vision, and it's just ideas. But it's also my excuse. So if there is resistance, I point to it and say, well, you guys said we should, do dormitories. It's right there on the document.
Recorded.
The nice thing about that is it's ideas, but it's not, here's exactly how to do it.
Right.
So we, over my job as a leader is to try to open doors, and I try to open a lot of doors. And some of them actually work, and the ones you work is where you put your energy in and help grow our program or our school.
Yeah, and it's such a, what you're pointing towards is it's not a clear black and white, like it's nuance. It's not a either or, but it's an and, where you want to open doors for possibility, but you've also said too, but we're going to keep our focus consistent, that we're not going to all of a sudden veer this one direction or veer this other. We're opening lots of doors and possibilities, but it's still within some clear direction or parameters that we've set. I love the riverbank, and I've shared this story numerous times. Lorna might roll her eyes because she knows exactly where I'm going. Jay McTighe, I was in a leadership session once where he had shared, as leaders, you have to set the banks of the river, make it really clear how we're going to function and operate as a team, but then don't try and micromanage the flow of the water. Let the water run within that. You have great people with great ideas at your disposal. Utilize it, but without the banks, the water's going to sprawl, and you lose all the power of consistent direction and focus.
And you know what I find most interesting at this point, and I'm not exactly sure when this happened, but the one setting the direction of the water right now in our school are the students. Yeah. And their voices through this structure have become so empowered that they come up with ideas and they come up with solutions, and they are running this agriculture program. And people don't entirely believe me until they actually see it in action. They go, oh, the students really are making decisions. They're deciding when to sell, when to buy, they're ordering food, feed, they're doing all these things, right? With supervision and help of staff, of course. But our students are so invested in our school that, first of all, our attendance rates are incredible. Our academic results are incredible. And are like, I do less than an hour of discipline a year in this building. Like, I don't do it. All of our doors are always unlocked. Our ballroom door, for example, is unlocked, and the students are expected to treat it with respect, and they do. Our farm is always unlocked. Students come in on the weekend, they do chores, they fix things. They have access actually to our school gym 24/7, and they use it. And I come in at different times of day, and there's students in here in this building doing things. And our school, and I emphasize this again, is a community building at this point. And the students, staff, community all feel a sense of ownership for it. And when you can get to that spot, the growth opportunities are incredible.
So you've alluded to it, and I want to dig into it just a little bit more, Kevin. Is, sometimes you talk with leaders about building a culture of collaboration, and it's about visionary, inspiring messages, and if I just create a place where everyone likes each other, we're going to have great collaboration. But you mentioned structures, that we have different structures. I am assuming that even with what the students are doing, that doesn't just happen just out of the blue. There's structures. So can you share with us just a few specific structures that you have in place in the school that allow this level of collaboration to exist and grow? We'll be right back to continue this episode. Have you ever walked out of a meeting and felt that nothing was accomplished? Have you ever sat during a team meeting creating your grocery list for the end of the day? Have you ever felt like the staff of the hit TV show The Office when Michael calls everyone to the conference room? Our most valuable resource is time. When you're tasked with leading any type of a meeting, your first question should be, how do I use this time effectively for myself and for my team? This requires planning. No longer can we call over the PA, everyone meet in the staff room, we have some things to discuss. Instead, we need to invest some time in planning the meeting agenda and how we engage with our team to produce the results we are hoping to achieve. Access the free guide, 5 planning considerations to transform your team meetings, and you'll receive valuable tips to ensure your team meeting time is effective, productive, and engaging. Go to bit.ly/5 planning teams. That's number 5 planning teams, all one word. Access the guide, and never again will you hear this meeting could have just been an email. And now back to our conversation.
Sure. So one example, and it's structure/routine. Every single morning and every single afternoon, the vice principal and I stand by the school doors, and we welcome the students into the school. And then all the teachers are also, within the foyer, waiting for the students to come. And as students come, teachers will go to their classrooms. But the vice principal and I stay there until the last student arrives at school. And then at the end of the day, we do the exactly same thing. We stand at the doors, we say goodbye to everybody. Excuse me. And then the teachers slowly migrate up there too. So by the time the last student leaves the school, all the staff are in that foyer saying goodbye to the students each and every single day. It happened about 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas that both the vice principal and I were away on a Tuesday. And usually the staff just step up and do the door thing. Yeah. But 4 grade 12 boys said, no, we got it. And they stood by the doors and they said goodbye to all the students, gave them high five, fist bumps, waited till the buses were gone, got in their vehicles and drove away. And it's that type of, they know that every single day we're happy they're here, and this is how we do things. And that the fact that grade 12 boys just recognize, hey, the principal, vice principal are gone, we'll take over, and they did it, shows how much they value this little thing that we do every single day, right?
But consistent and predictable.
That is incredible. Actually, I got goosebumps as you were saying that, because that does so indicate how important that community is and the structures that you have set up and how critical that is in their relationships and their sense of belonging in the school. Oh,
Um,
that's really
a-
amazing.
Another example, something we've worked very diligently at, is we try to keep consistency of programming from ECS up. So, sometimes I say in literacy, each teacher has their own little way of doing things, and I'm not a literacy expert, and I don't pretend to be one, but there's the silent E and there's the squealy E, and it all means the same thing, right? But in grade 3, my teacher said silent E. In grade 4, my teacher said squealy E. And I always imagine for a student who, especially a student who has a learning disability, how long it takes for them to figure that out, that that's the same thing.
Yeah.
So we've said we're not doing that to students. We're having the same programming. So we basically K-9, we approach literacy in the same way. We approach numeracy in the same way. And that's why we're getting great results in PATs and so forth, right? Because we're actually filling the gaps, filling the voids, and we're not spending all kinds of time having students relearn the system that I, as a teacher, like. We're putting the systems that work best for the students.
Well, Kevin, this has been phenomenal. We are reaching the place of our podcast where we ask our guests the same question, and it goes like this. In the spirit of, if you knew then what you know now, what advice would you give your past self in relation to establishing and sustaining highly impactful collaborative practices?
Oh my goodness.
And that's usually the response we get.
Yeah. I think this is just natural, and I think it has to happen. I bumbled along pretty good. The one thing, and Todd Whitaker's books, I enjoy Todd Whitaker's writing, but I believe it's Getting the Monkey Off Your Back one, where he talks about put your energy behind your stars. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do that at first. I tried to spend so much time getting those reluctant staff members to come along. And ultimately, they didn't come along because they didn't want to. And I switched probably around that 2017 mark, where I started working with the ones that wanted to do things that were my superstars and encouraging them. And that's when our school really took off. That's what when I speak with new administrators, I always say, focus on your great staff and work with them and let them excel, because that will ultimately change the culture of your school.
Yeah, great advice. And yeah, it's advice, not new advice, but it's great to hear it just reinforced again and again. And I, as a leader, did exactly the same thing as well.
Yeah. And it's incredible because we're so convinced that we can get every staff member to come along, and I don't want to be a fatalist or negative or anything, but some of them don't want to come along, and I've learned to figure that out much more quickly now.
Yeah. Well, and I think this then aligns with the accountability of, if this is not the right bus for you to be on, let me find you another bus.
Yeah, and I think
the person, but this may not be the situation.
And I think rural remote schools often we hire 2 feet in a heartbeat. It's the only applicant, and that's when you get these situations. I'm now at the spot where our story is out there, people know about our school, and I'm no longer getting one applicant. I'm getting several applicants, and I get to choose the best applicant, which makes my life so much easier moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's beautiful.
All right. Well, Kevin, if anyone is interested in reaching out, learning more about the work that's happening in Altario at the school and community, where's the best place to connect with you?
Probably Facebook. Send me a message on my Prairie principal, and I try to get back to people as quickly as possible. They're also welcome to call the school anytime if they want to come out for a tour, and the secretary will set that up.
Awesome. And we'll make sure that we include that information in our show notes as well.
Awesome.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for this conversation. It's just amazing to hear the work that has been happening in your school and the aspects of your leadership. And I want to come for a visit.
You're more than welcome.
All right. Well, wishing you all the best, and thanks once again for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
You too.
Take care.
I had talked to you before after hearing Kevin's story in different places and hearing him on different podcasts or um, different news articles that have been related. But wow, being able to connect and hear
Yeah.
what they've been able to accomplish, it doesn't happen without it's really innovative thinking and strong collaboration. But what were some of the key insights that you could take away for other leaders when trying to build that culture that obviously has been attained at Altario School?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really stood out to me is his vision and creating or co-creating that vision with the community.
Yeah.
And then understanding that, even when we have that vision, it means that we don't have each step figured out, but we're going to build this along the way. And we're going to make some adjustments as we go because, and he said it several times about he doesn't know all of the next steps, but we are going to work this out together and really listening and responding to his staff, his community, and students.
And students.
Yeah.
It would be an interesting exercise to go back and hear how many times the word we
Yeah.
was utilized in that conversation. There was few I statements within that, which is important. One of the things that really stood out for me, and it's not new thinking, but it's reinforcing the idea of clarity.
Yeah.
We've had a number of guests on this podcast talk about having clarity, clear, predictable, even the routine of the way they start and end the day. It's crystal clear, it's predictable, it's consistent, and people aren't left guessing or having to forge their own understanding of key messages.
Yeah, the other thing that really stood out to me in this conversation was the importance of relationships, and that really demonstrating his care and concern for students and for the community and taking the time to build those relationships. And the welcome and the farewell is one really small demonstration. Like it's really a small strategy, but has obviously great power in developing those relationships, but understanding that there's a consistency there too, that we are always here for you in the morning. We're always here saying goodbye to you at the end of the day and really creating those solid relationships.
But don't you think though that then those relationships also help with something else that really stood out of holding one another accountable? That if I have a relationship, a authentic relationship with somebody, it allows me to still be able to be firm and consistent and hold people accountable to our shared expectations, but I'm doing it in a way that's about our bigger picture that we're moving forward to together. This is not about you, the person.
No, and that's totally about having that shared vision that is clearly articulated, that everyone understands, and that we are moving forward together through collaboration.
Well, and to me, this has been one of the best examples we've seen around that. We talk about the desire for every child to benefit from a team, but this is one of the examples where that team is really broad to involve not just those in the school, but community members, parents, and students themselves as part of that team.
So empowering.
Absolutely. So as always, please like, subscribe, share this with a colleague. Please connect in the show notes to see some further information to be able to get in contact with Kevin and follow him through some of the social media platforms. Once again, huge thanks to him, and we look forward to our next conversation on building a culture of collaboration. Wishing you all the best.
See you